friends ever since.
One of the things that I really like about pocket operators in particular is that there's this whole kind of DIY community around them, and this is something that Teenage Engineering, to their credit, encouraged. And they have a whole page on their site where they share the different kinds of cases, stands and other accessories and reimaginings that people in the community have come up with. One of the big things though is custom cases, because as you know, pocket operators on their own aren't necessarily going to stand up to much abuse. And I put together a video a few weeks or maybe a month or so ago looking at some of the different options that there are around just now for cases if you're thinking of getting one. And that included some commercial options like the one that comes from Teenage Engineering, the wee silicone thing that you can pick up wherever you get your pocket operator, but also included a bunch of DIY options. And after seeing that video, somebody contacted me from Germany and said, hey, I make cases as well. Would you accept a couple if we would send them over and include them as another option for people if they're looking for a case? So I said, yes, please do send them over. I should say that they sent me them for free, but they're not paying me to say anything. I'm giving my honest opinion, and I'm really just presenting this as another option of the many that I've already looked at. So with that in mind, I'm going to take a look at what they sent. The name of the company or the people that sent this over, I believe, is Kleingedruckt. And I don't speak German despite having been born in Switzerland, so I apologise profusely for my pronunciation. But Google Translate tells me that is called, or it translates as small print or small writing, fine print, something like that. That may well not be correct, but I'll leave a link to their shop down below and you can go and figure it out for yourselves. The nice folks over there sent me a couple of different case options. They do have 3 different colours available at the time of making this video: a blue, a clear kind of sparkly white thing, and a red one, but I've only got the 2 to show you here. They do come with accompanying buttons, and you can obviously mix and match these when you buy them, which is quite cool. And yeah, we'll talk about the buttons a wee bit more in a second. But essentially this is it in terms of the case. Unlike some of the other pocket operator cases that you find, there isn't a back on this, so I'm presuming that it just slots on over the front like the official case from Teenage Engineering. The material itself, if you're familiar with 3D printed material, is often quite cheap feeling and quite hard and brittle, and that's been my experience with other cases I've looked at where I'm not sure they would necessarily stand up to much, but this one is much more flexible, and I was actually quite surprised. It's still obviously like a 3D printed material, but it's got a bit of flex to it, which is reassuring. One thing I would say about this is that this wee bit here, this connector that goes around the pots, is very thin, and I'm a wee bit concerned that if that took like the wrong kind of knock at the corner, that it wouldn't last very long. But I guess we'll see. It probably wouldn't matter much when it's in situ, but if you're going to be taking it off and putting it on a lot, then I'd maybe be a wee bit concerned about that. This version has a hole for the microphone slot, but I believe that is optional. You can let them know when you buy it. It has nice round holes for the buttons, which I like a lot. I'm not a huge fan of the square buttons that you get in some of these cases because they don't really actuate the switches as nicely. And in this one, it also has wee cutouts for the LEDs to shine through, which as far as I'm concerned is a must. Some cases don't have this, and apparently the version 1 of these didn't, but part of the whole operation of the pocket operators has been able to see those LEDs, so the fact they've got the holes means that's fine. Now, in terms of these buttons, I'm going to wait and put them in and see how they operate. I'm going to flip up the colours, because why would you put the same colour together? I think the mix and match looks nicer. But one thing I'll say immediately, when you put these in, the size of the buttons and the button pad actually works quite well. I have seen some cases where you get a button pad like this, but because of the way the material sits, the buttons move around, and it means in practice it doesn't work as well as individual buttons. But with these, yeah, it seems to do the job. So I've taken this opportunity as an excuse to buy another pocket operator to test these out with. It's PO12, I didn't have one of these before. Well, I had one a long time ago, but all my other ones are in cases, so, you know, if I'm going to get a new case, I may as well try a new pocket operator, right? Yeah. So I'm going to open this up and try it out. Any excuse. So here we have my nice new PO12. I'm going to put the batteries in actually so that we can get a proper test and make sure that the cases fit fine with the batteries in, because there's nothing worse than testing something without the batteries in and then realising when you put the batteries in it doesn't really work. There we go. I'm not going to... Oh, should I? Yeah, I guess I better take this off. Okay, there we go. So let's take a case and see how it works. I think that I should be able to keep this on. So if you want to keep the hook on, you're limited with your case options because a lot of them require you to snap that off, and people don't really like snapping it off sometimes. It's also a pain, it never snaps off cleanly. And you can also keep the wee stand bracket on, I believe. So let's see. I've not tried this before, so I'm not entirely sure how to fit it on, or if there's a trick or a knack or whatever, but I also want to be careful. I think I have to slide it in from the top. Yeah, so you have to slide it in with the bottom first, and then the case, I think, just clips around the edges. Oh yeah, so there's wee bend points on the case, which means you can theoretically get it on a bit easier. Oh, that's it. The stand still works, so that's cool. Yeah, that's actually quite good. So the case, when it's on, it fits quite nice and snug. There's no real chance of it coming off. Obviously there's no back protection. If that's an issue for you, then you want another case. But this way you protect the kind of front, which is a lot of the contact points and more sensitive PCB elements, and it actually makes a big difference that you can keep that stand on. None of my other ones have a stand, and it's a wee bit shit. So that's cool. It feels really nice because of the rubbery material. Like I said, the other cases I've had which have been 3D printed, which are more compact cases like this, don't feel as nice. But really, the big test is the buttons, because I think this can make or break cases where, you know, if the buttons don't feel nice, then, you know, you'd be as well without a case, really, because that's kind of the main thing when you're operating them. So let's have a go. I better turn the volume up. So I'm actually really pleasantly surprised, because I do like the look of circular buttons. I just think they look really cool, and I hadn't actually got a case with 3D printed circular buttons before. They were kind of square and I didn't love them, but I was a wee bit concerned about the buttons in these because they are quite hard, or at least they feel or felt quite hard when I saw them in the packet. But actually, when they're in the case, that works really well because they're sturdy enough that you get a really good amount of actuation on the buttons of the pocket operator itself. And they're centered quite nicely, so you get that kind of click. And they don't feel as hard as I thought they would. You can also hopefully see that, you know, you can see the LEDs through those wee holes, which is great. So that's quite nice. I'm going to try to take it off and put on the other case. Much easier to take off than it was to put on. I'm going to try both of them just because there can be tolerance issues with 3D printing, and you can get an idea of consistency by trying out a couple of different ones. Now I know the trick to slot it on. Hopefully it should be easier. And there we go. Yeah. And one thing I'll say actually is they must have the measurements of their 3D printing down to a T, because even in some of the other cases I've got, which are quite nice, the tolerances on these buttons are a wee bit off, or they're thin enough or wide enough, I guess, that they don't necessarily always match up that easily with where the buttons on the PO are, and you have to jiggle things about. But this one actually, yeah, works really nicely. When it comes to cost, this case is about half the price of the official Teenage Engineering silicone case, and is actually much better in terms of the button responsiveness, because one of the criticisms of the official case is that the silicone buttons, whilst they're quite nice to touch, you lack the tactility or the connection with the underlying buttons themselves, whereas with this, the hard buttons actually retain that clickiness, which is really nice. This case is also cheaper than the cheapest case that I reviewed on my other video, and it's also better than that. The buttons themselves, again, are way better than the wee square buttons on the kind of common case you see about that has flappy button window things. And if you're looking for a cheap, good value case, but you're not interested in like a thicker case because you still want to cart it about, then this is definitely an option to consider. And out of the 3D printed cases I've seen that aren't, you know, the replicas of the Akai MPC stuff, this is probably one of the best. Now, before I wrap this up, the folks who make these also sent me something else, which I'm going to take a look at now. And essentially, as far as I understand it, this is a pocket operator stand. So the idea is that you should be able to put the pocket operator in this, whether it's in the case or not, and then you get a bit more of, you know, a better viewing angle. Now, I probably should have looked up how to connect this together before I did this video, but I thought I would chance it and see if I could figure it out, you know, depending on how easy it is to put together. Oh, I should definitely have looked this up, but alas, here we are. Okay, I've had to look up a picture of the case on their Etsy shop because I couldn't figure out how to make this or put this together myself. So I'm presuming there isn't assembly instructions and I am an idiot. Ah, there we go. Okay, that took me an embarrassingly long time to put together. I think that the nice folks that make this would do well to put a wee illustration or diagram to explain to idiots like myself how to put it together, because I wasn't entirely sure if I'd done it right for the first few attempts, and maybe I still haven't done it right, but it does seem to work, so whatever. The way this is meant to work is that you can essentially just slide your pocket operator into it and it'll act as a stand, like so. Yeah, and so in that way you get a bit more of leverage if you're going to be using the PO in a studio thing. It feels fairly sturdy. You can keep the top on, of course, but I did have to remove the wee stand, built-in stand for this. In theory, this should work with their own case, I have been told. So I'll put the case back on and try it out. Okay, I've left the wee metal thing off again for this one, and it sits, it doesn't slide in the same way, it kind of sits on top of the stand and it catches, or it rests on, if I've built this correctly, it rests on the headphone jack there, or the outside of it anyway. And yeah, there you go, it works for that case as well. It doesn't hold it in place, or at least not the way I've got it when it's got the case on, but it does give you at least the stand, which is pretty good. Finally, they did say they weren't sure about whether or not the stand would work with the official Teenage Engineering silicone case, and I happen to have one here. I dug it out, so I'm going to try it out so that we can see. The one thing is, I don't want to snap off this, and to use the official case you have to snap it off, so I'm going to sit it in and hopefully that'll give us a good enough idea as to whether or not it works. Okay, this is about as good as it'll get for now without pulling the top off. Let's see if it fits. Moment of truth, moment of truth. Oh yeah. So yeah, it works with the official case as well. It rests on the same point as the case built by these folks right there. So that's quite cool. If you're interested in a stand, that's something else to make. Anyway, thanks to Max and Milan, who make these cases, for sending me them. I will be using one of these with my PO12. I can't quite decide if I prefer the blue one or the clear one just yet, but I'll probably mix and match them about. Check out their Etsy shop in the link below. I don't get a commission or anything like that, so this is not a vested interest. This is just a cool thing that some other people have made. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.